Nobody knows why a man becomes an actor. I think an important part of that was that I was raised as a boy in a fairly remote part of Michigan. And I essentially was by myself. I went to a one-room school with 13 pupils in 8 grades. And aside from hunting and fishing and trapping and canoeing and the things boys do in Michigan, I did a great deal of reading. And like all kids, I played pretend games. All children do that. They're instinctively actors, if you like, performers in the stories they play out. When my parents divorced and my mother remarried, we moved to a suburb of Chicago.
He also stopped seeing his father because he felt so self-conscious of the fact that he was from that kind of a, quote, divorced family background.
I had access to the best, what was then regarded as the best public high school in the United States, New Trier High School in Winnetka, Illinois. I can't emphasize too much how important New Trier was to me, given my special circumstances as a kind of a lonely hick kid from the woods who didn't know how to dance, didn't know how to drive, didn't have any money, didn't know how to date girls, had not a clue about dating girls. Had never played team sports because in Michigan there weren't enough kids to make up a team. And the only extracurricular activities I could take part in, that I was equipped for, were the rifle team and the chess club. Nonetheless, they did have for a high school, an extraordinarily well-developed theater program. They even had a radio program, obviously just in the school.
He was the strong right arm and has been through his entire career. Lydia was really the star in the family. And then when Chuck began to make a name for himself as a big star, Lydia decided that she would like another career.
He always took us with him whenever it was possible. And all of a sudden I realized that I wasn't acting anymore. And it was not a distress to me. I found that I had fallen in love with photography. It was a turning point in my life, and I have enjoyed photographing Chuck in various films and on location, and I think I have a really good record of a man being a father.
The fact that his parents were divorced at a very impressionable age scarred him terribly, and I think he must have made some kind of a pact internally at some point to change it when his time came round. He was such a wonderfully involved father.
I was impressed with how this man was able to feel and express great affection and even tenderness toward the father whom his mother always had rejected.
The country just next to St. Helen, where my grandfather basically grew up, was always very special to my father because he spent his earliest, very familiar years in those woods playing, and he knew all the rocks and the rivers, and he knew all the trees. And so it was so appropriate when my Grandpa Russ died that Fraser and my father took him to those woods and found a perfect spot to bury him. It was a country that he knew and loved.
Filmmaking is not fun. It's not supposed to be fun. People imagine, they say, oh gosh, it must have been marvelous to have a year in Rome shooting Ben-Hur, or a year in 7 months in Spain shooting El Cid. You're working 12, 13, 14-hour days in often miserable conditions, never quite getting it as good as you want. Always trying, always falling a little short, never perfect. And you do that. That's what you do for a living, but it's not fun.
boy who spent so much time reading and running in the woods and creating so many different fantasies was able to make a job out of it. With all the negatives that he grew up with, he turned them into positives. And I think what happened was that he really did grow into a great man, not only as a father, but as a man.
He could have developed one role, been typecast, and done the same thing over and over again, but he never wanted that. He always wanted a challenge.
You could see him anywhere. You could imagine him in any time, which you could not imagine other people.
Greatest admiration for Chuck. I mean, who else can play those great classical roles? Who else has the stature, the poise, the voice, and the manner to play all of the great historical characters that he's played? I don't know anyone else.
I suppose I'm not a 20th century man. I believe that actions have consequences, that men and women have responsibilities, and most of the men I've played believe that too. In a sense, my work has been my education, and I am the better for it.